You all set, Steve?
Working. So just for the record, we did take roll call and we also just did the pledge, moment of silence, and now you'll pick back up. We apologize for those that are watching online that it did not pick up the beginning of the meeting.
Okay, everybody's had a chance to review their packet. There was an agenda in there for everyone tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Thanks, Tom. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, I see members of the public here tonight. If there are items on the agenda that any of the members of the public wish to comment on, now would be the time. If it's non-agenda items, that would be for later. Unless we think it would be, we want to give them an opportunity.
It's up to you.
How many want to speak tonight? Just two, so you together. I'm inclined to have them speak now so that they can, we all want to get home and watch the Eagles at some point, so. Okay, so why don't we start with you, sir, and just come up to the podium, state your name and your address.
Make sure you have the green light on the mic, please.
All right, John Gathercole, 3900 Whitestone Road. I've been a resident of the Newtown Square community for about 5 years. 6 or 7 months ago, we moved out of state, and then actually moved back to the same residence at 3900 Whitestone Road. Long story, I will not bore you. We'll be here past the Eagles game, but so I do have a sprinkler system installed in the home. Never had to use it. It does have a second meter. I'm aware from Denise that I would like read the meter and then send it in monthly, but I never used it. The previous owners, I guess they scheduled to turn on. We took the property back end of May, early June. We moved back in August, and then I received a sewer bill for $1,013, which my normal bill, I have all the documentation, is roughly like 95 to 195. So I'm just basically asking for some type of acceptance for that one bill, because I haven't used it. I do know the process. I took some pictures. I do have the second meter, so I understand, but I've never used it before. So I'm just asking for some type of forgiveness on the bill.
When was the water usage? Was it prior to you retaking ownership?
No, it was when I I got the sewer bill from when I took ownership.
Yeah.
For the $1,000.
But was the $1,000 for any portion of? Does it?
Yeah, I'm unaware exactly, because like we took ownership of June. I guess the bill would be June, July, August, or July, August, September. Okay, so it would have been in my ownership, yes.
And it's your understanding that the sprinkler system was running and you weren't aware of it?
Yeah, I wasn't aware. I took ownership back of the house at the end of May. I think we settled like May 31st, but we didn't move back in from out of state until the end of August.
It was running while you were.
I assume it was running because I got the bill. I paid my aqua bill as well. That was obviously considerable. But the sewer would have, if I would have taken pictures of the meters, obviously that would have been deducted.
I think under the circumstances, I mean, I'd recommend, my recommendation to would be that you put a letter together, make a formal request in writing.
Okay.
You can send that via email, even Nease, and then he can forward that to us. We are not permitted to amend our agenda and provide any type of monetary reimbursement without having it on the agenda.
Sure.
4 hours in advance.
Yep, no, understood. Yeah, I talked to Denise. She said, come here to speak to the board.
Well, at least we're aware now.
Yeah, that's great.
We can, deliberate on it. Next meeting.
I appreciate that. That's all I can ask for. Stephen, can I have your email or?
Okay, do you want to come up now or both of you? Again, just state your name and address and tell us what you're here for.
Sure.
It's Matt and Sue Urso. We live at 113 Tyson Road, but we're actually here for her mother who lives at 93 Boot Road, Donna Dunn. So it's about the sewer extension on Boot Road. Back in 2019, when the project kicked off, the initial information that we've been given was that her house being 170 plus feet from Boot Road would be an exception from the town code. We found out last week, I guess, that somewhere along the lines that that was a misreading of the town code, but we have never gotten any notification that there was a change. But since we got the latest package saying you need to connect to the sewers within 60 days, I had called, I'd left a voicemail for Mr. Porter here and sent him an email, but then I finally called the township and they said, oh, there must have been a misreading. And at some point in the last few years, there was well, I don't know if there had ever been an official correction to that policy. But we just found out last week, instead of 4 years ago, that she does need to connect. So we're trying to now play catch up for the last 4 years, if that is now a requirement. And I guess there's some requirements for paying $7,000 for the connection, and within 60 days, there's lower fees. So we're trying to make up, I guess, for lost time, and wanted to see if we could either get some dispensation from some of the time periods so that we can kind of play catch up if that is the case. And we're curious if there ever was a public announcement that there was a correction.
Yeah, we meet monthly and certainly talked about the amount of, the footage between, I know that Steve wasn't here initially when you began speaking, so I apologize, but, the contention is that there was initially a requirement that didn't have, if you were more than 100 feet from the connection point, you wouldn't have to connect.
Oh, okay.
So why don't we have Dave, why don't you speak to that point alone? And then we'll just take it from there.
Sure. So the way that the sewer ordinance read or reads is that, and I was trying to pull it up here so I can read the exact what the website.
Yeah, I know one section speaks about
Yeah.
adjacency, and then it
Yes.
speaks about the 150.
So if you have an occupiable building on the property and the property is within 150 feet of the sanitary sewer main, then you would be obligated to connect to the public sewer. I think the discrepancy was that there was an and or an or in the ordinance, and the way it was interpreted initially was that if the dwelling was greater than 150 feet,
Right.
then you would not be required to connect. But because the property that has the dwelling is within the 150 feet, that triggers the requirement to connect.
Understood. Now, was there any kind of public correction sent to the homeowners? Because again, we've been kind of ignoring these since then, because I have
I don't think there
actually,
was any, I mean, from what I understand, there wasn't any change to the ordinance.
Which is a
no, understood.
Yeah.
But if it was
It's not
found
even
that there was a misreading at some point, wouldn't there be notification to the residents that this applied to?
Well, I don't think there was any notification to the owner of any dwelling that misstated whether or not they had to connect.
Well, this is the original PowerPoint that's on your website that says habitable buildings over 150 feet from sanitary sewer are exempt from connection. I have an email
I
here.
think what I'm saying is that,
Yeah.
the law hasn't changed.
Oh, no, I'm not arguing the
Okay,
law.
so-
I'm not arguing that you shouldn't connect. I'm trying to work within the law, but wondering why within the last 4 years, there hasn't been some correction so that we would have.
Well, and I think there has been, and that's why I'm saying that we meet monthly, and believe me, that doesn't mean we're not gonna work with you. So-
No, I'm
Okay,
not.
but I just want to make it clear that, if there was an announcement that misconstrued the ordinance, that was corrected over time. Or at various meetings. I know I've been on this board for many, many years during this 537 plan. I know the issue has come up and it's been addressed. We've corrected it. The website's been corrected. Information given by the township's been corrected. I understand the information you got was
Well, yeah, there's
led
been,
you to led your mother-in-law to believe a certain set of facts, which is, I mean, that happens. And this is a huge plan. It was a huge project, And, things are not gonna be perfect, and this is maybe
And
one
that's fine.
example of that. So let's then go to the next step. Maybe there may be something that we can do by way of timeframes. But that would likely be the extent of our authority. So, you got the letter on what date?
Well, it's dated October 17th. I think she got
So
it
it would be
later than that.
60 days. Okay, well, so let's just say, 60 days approximately from there. How much time do you think your mother would need in order to get?
Well,
this
again, for
process
the last
rolling?
4 years, we've done nothing on this. I would have
Nobody else
gotten.
has either, though. Nobody else has either.
Really? Okay.
But I understand that you thought you were gonna, we're residents too, all of us, and we don't, I'm accepting everything you're saying at face value, so. Thinking, would an additional 90 days be something that you could work with?
I guess, I mean, whatever you can give, because again, like I said, we just found out last week after 4 years of believing it wasn't a problem. And also what was disturbing was, I mean, she's in her 80s, she's a widow. If we knew back in 2019, she may have actually sold the property before the sewers were put in. Now she has an expense, and her house being
She would have, listen,
170
back
feet is gonna
even then,
cost.
I mean, just so you know, there was a lot going on in that area. Anybody who had to connect, I mean, there was a lot that had to happen with sales that took place. So your mother still would have had issues even if you sold back, back then.
Okay,
So-
but again, just, yeah, and yeah, it's
And-
just that her house is so far set back on her property, it's gonna cost her a tremendous amount to connect. And I know there's no way around that. It is what it is.
Well, why don't we do this? I mean, we all want to, make sure that we hear everything you've got to say by way of, what you think might work. But I'm thinking you could communicate with us whether or not you believe an additional 90 days would be acceptable. And then we can get that in writing so that you've got something to protect your mom and yourselves from anybody at the township taking any action in that regard.
Sure.
And Madam Chair, if I might add that the connection deferment provisions in the ordinance may benefit the property owner.
Yeah, you still have to pay, I guess, for certification, and she
Right.
is actually looking at now moving into senior housing, so she'll probably sell within the next 6 months, a year. So
Right.
that will again trigger a connection. So either way, that doesn't give us a lot in that case.
Okay.
It's not like she's staying there for 10 years, so, yeah.
Well, that would be my suggestion that.
Okay.
We have an informal offer from the board to give you an additional 90 days on top of the 60. You could, just confirm that in writing, to Mr. Nease.
Mhm.
And, we'll get it on the agenda for our next meeting or soon thereafter, depending on when you can.
Sure. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Okay, nobody else from the public. All right, can I have a motion to approve the minutes? I'm assuming everybody had a chance to review from the October 16, 2023 meeting.
So moved.
Thank you, Steve. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Louis. Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. At this point, do we have a treasurer's report?
Here's your cash position. And typically as we watch that, this is kind of in line of where we've been, although we've just made last month a payment for the bonds, and so obviously that came out. But just I think we're in solid position. You can see particularly the SR3 numbers related to capital and also related to the operating fund. About $1 million of the 2,300 is related to, 2.3 million. I said 2,300, 2.3 million is related to tap-in fees there. So that will be moved over. And then the only other thing that I would bring your attention to on the cash side is we still have quite a few escrows outstanding, and I think they're going to start closing out a couple of them over the next couple of months related to some of the projects that are going on. So if you'll go ahead and pull up the budget, I think it's called budget worksheet. On the budget worksheet, if you make that just a little bit bigger, my eyes will be able to see it a little bit better. Thank you. The budget worksheet, we're on target revenue wise when it relates to if I just look at basically what we've collected is about 3/4 of the year, if you're thinking about it that way, when we look at revenues. And so if you kind of take any one of those numbers, divide it by 3 and then multiply it by 4, you'd be pretty close to where we're going to be for the year. You'll see on the SR2, which is the eastern side of the township, looks like we're going to hit our number for the year pretty well. Revenue, total revenue, I don't see any issues there. And so that's where I think we'll be with that. Expenditures are kind of on target mostly across the board. There's a couple spots that I've been reviewing as I've been working on the budget that I would just make note that I think some things have been with all the changeover we've had in the office. I think a couple of things were coded to the wrong line item, and we're going to go back and get that corrected. Any questions on SR2? I'm going to have you drop down to where you see 73, please go down. And then in 73, which is SR3, we're even ahead, but most of what we're ahead on, if you look at the tap-in fees, that's the number that's driving that. But the other numbers, if you look at them, we're kind of on target where we would need to be. The one thing that I would bring to your attention is the debt service fee in SR3 is behind. Part of that's because of the commercials not hooked up yet, and that's most of that. And I think that'll turn that around pretty strongly going into 2024. And I would be glad to entertain any questions that you might have.
You mentioned budget, so when might we see a draft of what 24 looks like? I know we finalize it usually in February.
Yeah, I'm hoping to have a draft for you next month, and I'm hoping that actually you have the draft within maybe like the week after Thanksgiving. So you'll have plenty of time to look at it and kind of know where we are. I've been working on it the last couple of days. I know that George and Yvonne met and went through and did a first run. I'm trying to pull a couple things over into a combined sheet for you so that, because you'll recall last year, we really focused on combining SR2 and SR3 into one. And so I'm making sure I can pull that together for you as well. And that's the one thing that I'm still working on. I think that it's comfortable to say that I will for sure have it to you within like a week and a half time frame. The good news is the numbers that I'm getting from both CDCA and from RHM are well within line of what we would have expected. There's a slight increase in both, but it's a lot less than what I was anticipating when I first started doing this. So that's good news for us. And I think part of that's because the Florida Park residents didn't get on yet. And so we didn't get that new flow this year. And so that'll happen next year. So we'll probably have a true up next year that needs to happen, but that's where we live.
When we adopted this year's budget
Yes,
last year,
yes,
we put together sort of a documentation of sort of future direction on things that we might likely do.
yeah,
And my assumption would be that we would accept that direction. If, as you're putting it together, if you think that the board might need to differ from what it found it wanted to do 10 months ago,
yeah,
that would be helpful. So
yeah.
we talked about stepped increases in some of those categories on the billings.
I'm, make sure I'm understanding. I think you're talking about infrastructure fee as well as
Rates.
the debt service fee. And I'm moving forward with those because I know what needs to happen long-term. And at this point, I don't want to do a true up until we get everybody
fine.
connected and know that it's working like it's supposed to be.
Absolutely.
Because I don't want to be overcharging if we don't have to.
Right.
And so I'd like to wait one more year and then make it determine if we need to do something different.
Right. Okay.
All right, Dave Porter, with the engineers.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As usual, we'll start with sanitary sewer project items. On the Camelot side, AP Construction, who did the Old Masters driveway construction, was back out since the last meeting to stabilize areas that needed additional attention as far as ENS controls and vegetation growth in preparation of filing the notice of termination and scheduling a final walkthrough with the County Conservation District. So that has been completed. There's a couple of items that we need to add to our as-built plans for the stormwater features. Once those get added to the plans, those NOTs will be filed. There's a couple of documents that I think I mentioned before that Steve will have to sign on behalf of the authority. But aside from that, those will be filed shortly, and then we'll schedule our final walkthrough with the County Conservation District to terminate those permits. The authority should be aware that moving forward, the environmental reporting aspect related to the wetland disturbances, wetland restoration areas have to have some ongoing monitoring and reporting requirements as part of that. And I'll get you the frequency and I'll get you a cost for that moving forward so that Steve can build that into the budget. It's probably going to be maybe a couple of $1,000s a year just to get an environmental scientist out to evaluate all of the crossing locations and make sure they're stabilized, make sure all the vegetation's growing, hasn't been impacted by deer or any other issues with regard to the plant vegetation establishing. Moving on with connections in the Dogwood area, we have 5 of the 6 or 7 connections have been completed. We've received, I want to say probably 15 applications within Florida Park. Connections were starting this week within the Florida Park service area for the Old Masters pump station. That station is in auto, so it's receiving flow or ready to receive flow. KBX Golden has been notified that the station is in auto and they have to add that to their ongoing maintenance routine. We do need to notify the CDCA that the pump station will be operational at this point in time. Steve, I'm happy to do it, or you as the liaison to CDCA want to reach out to them. It's up to you. We're working on getting some cost quotes for the reparation of the crane at the Ellis pump station. Recall we had a contractor go out and visit the site. We're looking at doing some minimal excavation, doing some additional concrete work between the foundation for that crane and the wet well.
And what fence is broken?
There's a faux wrought iron, it's a black aluminum decorative fence that surrounds the pump station enclosure. I'm presuming that it got damaged as part of the Ellis construction.
Let them fix it.
Yeah, yep. So I have not seen it. I'll have to go out and take a look at, put eyes on it and see exactly what's damaged. And then we'll cross that bridge. We'll reach out to other folks at Ellis to see if they can repair it. I did meet with Evoqua, who's the company that we consulted with during the sewer project design for the odor control system. Known as you probably heard bioxide odor control. Those systems are at 3 of 4 of our 5 pump stations, all except for the Camelot Lane pump station. So I met with one of their maintenance representatives to discuss what they offer as far as ongoing maintenance of their systems. We do have the remote read capability that was part of the bid package to have that ability to just monitor level. I told him to, give me different tiers of services that you provide. I'll get that in front of the authority. He promised to have it to me by December 6th of ahead of our next authority meeting. So I can share that with the authority. But I said, honestly, I think the authority is inclined to go with whatever the least costly package that you have, at least initially, would be.
Dave, just follow up a little bit. I mean,
Yep.
KBX's reports say dioxide systems don't work in any of the pump stations.
They do. That the systems initially were not completed or were in disrepair. Portions of them were damaged during the final portions of construction. I think one of the systems was left over the winter. One of the pipes cracked. That I've met with Evoqua on site, and they've repaired all of those systems. They probably are not functioning the way they ought to at this point because they're left in auto. It's based on the gallons per day that the station pumps. So the remote read capability allows them to adjust that dosage based on how much is actually being pumped, not what the station's anticipated to pump. So the thinking behind that is that, if you need more product based on the number of pump cycles that go through more product will be dosed. If you don't need as much product, it won't kick on to dose. That should theoretically save product, provide for the correct dosage to handle the odor control, and also provide for the hydrogen sulfide acid removal or neutralization to protect the wet wells and the mechanicals of the pump systems. So
Are we paying for any dioxide?
not yet. There was an initial fill at the stations. I know the Old Master Station is the only one that has not been filled at this point. The other stations have been.
So we're kind of ready.
Yep.
And this is for fumes, I'm assuming, right?
For odor, yeah.
Yeah. So, Steve, have we received any complaints regarding odor? Is that
I
something-
don't think so. The only place where we ever received complaints is the place that we had the backup. So,
Right.
Which makes sense.
Before.
Yeah.
I think we interrupted you, so.
I
if
did,
you
I
any-
was asking about dioxide.
No, that's okay.
I mean, it was in KBX's report, which is why I.
No, I think it's a really good.
So I'll have
Paying for it.
that pricing and those services available to the authority at the next meeting. I did meet with Jalen Bradley, discussed potential resolution to close down that project. As discussed with the authority, I will put some things in writing to Jalen Bradley. Hopefully when Mike returns, I'll be able to converse with him and discuss appropriate measures to finally close out that project. On the authority's agenda tonight is a resolution for a local share account grant. There's a resolution that needs to be adopted by the authority. It's under item 12.1, a new business. I'm not going to go too far into that, so we can cover that when the time comes. I'm still working on French Road design plans. I did prepare design plans for the Westchester Pike crossing at Dunwoody, which is being rolled into that grant application. And lastly, there's been some issues again in the sanitary sewer system near St. Albans Circle. It is believed to be coming from one particular source at that location. Some other folks downstream of that source have had blockage issues. This is something that Public Works and Newtown Codes and myself have investigated in the past. This is directly related to the authority's fog ordinance, fat, oil, and grease control. The location where we suspect the grease to be coming from is a catering facility and kind of small food market. They do currently have grease traps implemented inside the building. They have several of them inside the building. When we went out, it was about 1.5 years ago to visit the premises. They did provide maintenance records for those grease traps. And it was recommended to them that they increase the frequency in which those grease traps are pumped and maintained. To the best of my knowledge, to date, they've not continued to provide that reporting. My recommendation to the authority would be that, a letter be sent to that company and require them to install an external grease trap that's properly sized for the facility. That's consistent with the ordinance, I believe, Steve. And by doing that, it gives the authority the ability to sample, monitor, and identify whether they are in fact discharging illicit.
And they've received how many opportunities document and does with evidence of regular post draft?
That other than the meeting we had with them, 1.5 years ago.
So 1.5 years ago, there was a meeting.
Yes.
They were told to provide us documentation.
Correct.
But, I mean, my feeling is we ought to get them a letter to indicate that they haven't done so and let them know that we are exploring our options, including the following, not commit to anyone at this point, but.
Yeah, just to be clear, they did initially provide the maintenance records. And it was recommended to them that they increase the frequency upon which they were doing the maintenance. I think they were cleaning and pumping every couple of months, 2 or 3 months. We suggested that they do it monthly because of the issues that have occurred. But I hear you loud and clear. A letter to them.
We don't know whether or not they have in fact been pumping money. It's a possibility,
Right,
am I
it's a
right?
possibility, yes.
So
We don't know.
maybe that's what needs to go into this letter that I think it would be best coming from you, Dave, that, don't you, Steve? That
Well, it would probably, I mean,
unless you think it's better coming from you, I have no
I think
problem
if
either way.
Dave puts it together, I'll review it and then we'll make a determination which is the best way. May actually be best to come from Andy, just because he has the authority for enforcement. And so we'll look at it, we'll come up with a plan.
I mean,
to
we'll
act
let
it
them know that we haven't received the
Yeah.
monthly records.
Right, yeah.
We can only presume then that they have not been regularly cleaning up this crap. Therefore, the board is currently
looking at options.
reviewing their options, including mandatory installation.
Yeah, and I don't think the board, I don't think we need to authorize you to do that. I think proactivity on the
Or
part
the
of.
authority, I
Yeah.
guess. The authority is review.
We'll take it.
Sounds good. Okay, I think we're moving on then, if that was.
Yes, that concludes my engineer's report this evening.
Anything else, Steve, or do we Do you have anything else for us as the operation?
The only thing, I have a couple quick things for you, on your, we don't need to pull it up, but the KBX report was attached
Yep.
to your agenda. If you had any questions, I'd be glad to get back with KBX and get back to you with the answer. In addition to that, just so you know, we're continuing we've mailed out all the letters to all the residents that would be connecting to the Old Masters Pump Station. And we're also making sure Dave and I finalized Campus Boulevard, and we're finalizing a couple other businesses, and we'll get those out if they haven't gone out already, they'll go out this week and get those taken care of. So we'll have everybody be able to hook up. The only one that's in question is one that we have a litigation matter with, and we've shared that.
Couple of quick points on the KBX report. So that either distinction or difference on what's functional and what isn't functional
Yes.
on the bioxide, it would just
Yeah.
be great if maybe they could
Yeah.
figure that out with Dave.
Yeah.
On the report, the other thing is in the Newtown Hunt station. Eco just decides to play with voltage and taking half the circuit off, and I mean, does that happen with frequency or?
That was very bizarre to see that in the
Yeah,
report.
I'm-
It seemed based on what was written in the report that it looked like one leg of the three-phase power was either tripped or Pico. I find it hard to believe that Pico would deliberately take out one of the three phases of power. Something tells me that either a tree branch or something fell or something happened
Yeah.
that tripped.
And so they troubleshot the control system, but I'm assuming everything is fine.
Yeah, I mean, that's
That's
what
how
I
I interpret it.
that's how I interpret it as well.
Hey, anything else, Steve?
That's all I have for this part.
All right, moving on. Consider approving the bills on check register A dated November 9, 2023, totaling $23,844.49. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye. Consider approving the bills on check register B dated November 20, 2023, totaling $227,137.02. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Take that from Louis. Do I hear a second?
Second.
From Steve? Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Right, next, we have for consideration for the board a grant application for the cost of the Westchester Pike sanitary sewer replacement projects. Information was in your packet. Dave, why don't you just give us just a short background on this, and then if we need to take forward action, we can do so.
Hey, Madam Chair, thank you. This is related to a previous project that was already publicly bid in 2022. The bid, actually one bidder returned a bid through that process. And the cost at the time was much higher than the authority anticipated. So the authority rejected the bid and committed to rebidding it sometime, I think, in the first quarter of 23. At that time, we were waiting on response for the 2022 small water and sewer grant. Was an ARPA grant. That, to my knowledge, hasn't been awarded. I haven't seen anything. It was supposed to have been awarded in July of 23. I have not seen anything. Steve hasn't seen anything. So during that time, there's been some other issues that have presented themselves with regard to the public sewer. One being the crossing at or near Dunwoody Village, where that line has sort of a sag in the middle crossing Westchester Pike. With this grant opportunity becoming available, we prepared a cost estimate, rolled that into this grant application for funding for that project and for the initial sewer replacement project, which was near the Charlotte's restaurant, and there was an apartment complex adjacent to the Charlotte's restaurant that was getting some blockages and surcharging from the public sewer in that location. So it's called a local share account. It's a statewide available grant. It's through the PA Racehorse Development and Gaming Act. It's administered through the Commonwealth Financing Authority. There's no match required. Eligible applicants are municipalities or municipal authorities, among others. Eligible projects are projects in the public interest, which just qualifies for uses of the funds, are eligible for construction, demolition, infrastructure, including engineering, administrative costs, and contingency monies. There's certain percentages that you're allowed to go up to for contingency and administrative costs. The grant itself eligible for $25,000 or more, with a cap at $1 million for each project. So taking the publicly bid amount of the approximately $316,000 and the cost estimate of about $110,000 for the new Westchester Pike crossing, adding in up to 2% for administrative and about 5% of the construction costs for contingencies, this grant would be in the amount of $450,000. On your agenda,
If they
the
funded
resolution,
if they gave us 100% of the grant,
if they gave you 100%, correct?
the cost is.
And,
Yep.
and it doesn't go out for public bid until after we submit the grant application and the grant is issued, or can we? Put it out for bid?
You could publicly bid it at any time. You just need to be aware that the timing is such that if you were to bid it right now and we're waiting to hear on award, there would be a delay in awarding a contract, and it probably would be prudent to wait to publicly bid that till it's a closer time frame to when we anticipate the bids to be awarded. Typically, these things are awarded in June, the beginning of the second quarter of every calendar year. So,
And I'm assuming they require you to spend the money within a certain amount of time.
yeah, there'd be a contract that would go out with that grant award. I believe this one is a 2-year time frame. Yeah, I don't know off the top of my head.
2 years,
but
right.
Yeah, I believe it's 2 years. So
Okay,
a
so
project of this
not a-
scale would be 3-4 months, 6 months at the most. So the resolution's required as part of the grant application. Steve Nease signed on behalf of the authority that the authority owns, operates, and maintains the sanitary sewer system. So there's an ownership certification as part of that. The application is filed online through the state portal, which everything is completed, ready to go, other than receiving the copy of the resolution, which the authority does adopt the resolution tonight. I'll work with Steve to get a copy of it. I'll upload it, and the deadline for the application is the 30th of November.
At this stage, I'll make a motion to adopt the resolution approving the submission of the local state account grant application related to the Westchester Pike sanitary sewer replacement projects. I made the motion. Second by Louis. Any questions or comments?
I have one comment that I'll make after we vote on this about your letter. It doesn't influence the current motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Like to make that comment now?
I'd love to.
Okay, go ahead.
First of all, I thought the cover letter on this was very informative. I would bring up a couple of points, because we've talked about how we eventually begin an inventory of some of our old infrastructure. Both of these projects have sewer lateral mains that are 75+ years old, more or less. There were some similarities between each of these projects. The potential for I&I, age, and some form of failures that we're already experiencing. And if those are just sort of 3 common topics, if there was a way to create a grid of some of our older infrastructure and sort of put a score on each of those 3 or 4 categories, that might be a nice tool for us as years go on. And some of the stuff that we addressed, that was really helpful for me.
Certainly. I'm glad it was helpful. I can offer the authority that over the years doing the Chapter 94 reporting for the municipal authority, we've continuously updated our sanitary sewer maps. Initially, we had the county planning department did the mapping for us at no cost to the authority. They've kind of changed hands over there a little bit with the individuals that we worked with. But we had all the data, so we used that data set to improve upon and add things as development transpired. That mapping could be used as a basis of delineating drainage areas for I&I detection, you name it. I mean, you can get really detailed into what you want to use that platform for. I'd be happy to pull together some mapping to show, here's the RHM service area, here are the problem areas that we've encountered, the sort of hotspots that are in that service area. Same thing with the CDCA side. If you like, I can work up some cost proposals for that type of stuff. And
I just think it's important for us to know what's the next two projects that the authority is going to do before failure.
Yes.
That we've sort of said we want that infrastructure fee to help us do, and these haven't failed yet. We've had problems with them,
Right.
But they haven't had total failure.
And believe me, it's like peeling layers of the onion. I mean, sometimes we don't know how bad things are until we have a catastrophic event like a sanitary sewer overflow that really kind of reveals the hand that we have to play. So,
Thank you.
Okay, I think we're moving on at this point. To 12.2, do we have a preliminary budget report?
Yes. So I just wanted to kind of go over a couple things. One, I've kind of already covered, but I hope to have a more formal document to you at the December timeframe. One of the pieces that's that would be potentially in the budget that I don't have in yet, that I'm working through. I believe we put a job description in your packets for you to look at in the FYI section. That was for, I think we gave it the title of operations supervisor. We can come up with a better title, but it gave me something to put a title on to get us started for discussion purposes. This position, as I see it, would be dedicated to the authority versus my guess it would be a township employee based on how our current agreement is. We could discuss whether we change the agreement with the township, but currently that's the place where we are. It would be potentially a township employee, but it would be dedicated to your service in fulfilling the things that are being done. And as we looked at it, we took some things off of the finance department, had them focusing more, reaching out and doing like thinking ahead budget wise and those kind of things. I think that as we thought about it, that your potentially your basic monthly reporting and bank rec, we would still have done through the finance office, but that more of your you're looking forward and you're looking at maybe some more of your detailed reports this position would cover. Then we looked at somebody who would have the ability to spend some time and would be able to respond to issues in the community when there's residents that have concerns and things like that. Obviously would be one of those things, particularly when we have sewer overflows and things like that. I would see this person helping to be the person on the street. It would probably take some of my time away from that. It would also probably take some of George's time away from that. And we would have that person, I think still Harry's going to be the initial responder who's doing the actual work, getting people started. But I would see this person working as a liaison with Dave, make sure Dave's contacted, make sure the proper reports are filed with DEP. All of those kind of things would be being done. And then the next piece that I really saw that this position would do We already have a person that's kind of dedicated for utility billing and doing that. They would oversee that person, work with that person, and then they would, your agendas, your packets, they would be kind of the one that takes on that responsibility on the day-to-day kind of side of doing that. Looking at all of that to combine, I think there's a couple things that will do for you. Not that you want to get rid of me yet, but if someday you may decide that it's in your best interest to have an operations person who's not also the township manager. And so this would hopefully move us in that direction. And the other thing that it would do, that I think would benefit you, is that when there is a conflict that occasionally happens between the township and the authority, where we have something, this person could really be representing you and not necessarily representing us. And so, representing the township. And so that would be something that I would think that would benefit both parties today, in that. And it could be that this person could eventually, like I said, become the person who would take over. And if we get them trained well and you were to say, yes, we think that's what's best for us, I think that you could see yourselves operating with a small staff and doing that. So that's kind of my recommendation, that I try to add that position in the budget. I'm looking at how to do that with the township's budget right now. I will tell you the township's budget we're struggling on this year. And so we're trying to get those numbers. And so probably not the year for me to go in and say, yeah, I need to do this, but at the same time, I think it's the right thing to do for the authority. And so I'm going to work and try to figure out what that is. I realize ultimately that the position would be 100% paid for by the authority. So I want to take that on. But I think on the other side of that, there's some funds that the authority has given the township that would go away then, because you're paying time for me, you're paying time for Yvonne, you're paying time for some others. Some will still be doing things, and I need to figure out exactly what that is. And so that's the piece that I haven't kind of gotten finalized, and I will try to get that finalized within the next week, particularly if you're interested, so that I can go back to the board and make sure that when we pass the budget for next year, we add that position in.
So I thought the description was good. One thing that it really doesn't cover well, which leads me to say I'm not ready to see you not be the operations manager or involved. We're still a local government unit, and we still have a borrowing ability, and at some point in time we may need to. And so I don't know if there was anything or enough in that description to sort of have an understanding of bond issues and things like that, beyond just the financial aspects that Yvonne would handle. So that was just comment number one. But I'm a supporter of it. I think there are some odds and ends and some other really important things. Some of the stuff we discussed earlier with some ratepayers might be headed off by somebody who could spend a little bit of time.
They should not be coming to you.
Yeah,
they should be getting
like
that addressed.
So I'm a supporter of that.
Yep.
Are there precedents in other townships that have this position?
What's really interesting is that I don't know of another township that's doing it the way we're doing it right now. I've talked to several folks who most authorities have their own staff. Okay. Or they're really not in the operations side. Like there's a lot of authorities that own but don't operate. The township does the operating, and so it's not a real issue. It's kind of a unique piece that we have where you're the authority that's operating, and yet all of the staff is either third party and or the township.
I was just wondering to see if there was any precedents we could look at to help.
Yeah, it's kind of a unique, it's kind of been unique because I've kind of looked to try to say, You know, who else is doing what I'm doing? And there's not a lot out there that are doing what I'm doing. And probably they're a lot smarter than I am, because they're not. But I've always felt that it was up until this point, if we could save both the township and the authority money, it made sense to do it the way we've done. I think we're at a spot as the authority continues to grow, that's the case. Now, one option that I don't know where the board is, okay? So I don't know if the board's going to do this, but I tried to leave the job description a little bit broad purposely. If the board were to assign storm sewers to you, I would see them picking up that role, that person picking up that role as well. And so, you know, that's one of the things that I've been careful about how that looked on the job description. I think I did put sanitary in one place, but I think that it could be broader, and that could make your role broader as well. I just don't know if that's going to happen right now. There's talk one way or the other. The board hasn't made a decision. Finance committee is actually, I think, recommending that as a consideration. And I think it's a wise consideration. In that, I don't know that you want that additional responsibility, but it is something that to be considered in that. And so I would think at that point, we would actually potentially need to add a third person who would be focused on it a little bit differently as well. But this would be a good laying of the ground to move in that direction if that were to happen. And even if it doesn't, as we've expanded, I mean, we've added roughly about a third of our size with what we did. And we really haven't added a lot more staff in the process. So this makes sense to me. It makes sense to me with the fact that someday I hope to retire, and it would be good to set you guys up into a spot. No, I know that Leonard told
Too, by the way.
yeah, Leonard told me that I had 30 more years, and I said, you may not want me 30 years from now. But no, in seriousness, as we think about that, I think that it might be a perfect transition at that point. And I think if we could lay the groundwork now, get somebody in for, you know, until I were to do that and get you set up and to, you know, hopefully get that person well-trained into what you do. And, you know, that might be a great opportunity at that point to allow the township to do what it needs to do and you to do what you need to do and move forward.
So, just getting back to the fact that this, job description part of the projected budget,
Yep.
so that I have a good understanding of what we're doing, that I think we're doing. This will budget for this position.
Yes.
Okay, we're not necessarily putting this out for advertising.
No, this
I just wanted to
strictly,
be clear on that.
yeah,
Okay.
this would strictly be for your rate today.
Yeah.
All I would be looking at is looking for you to say, yes, I want you to put it in the budget so that I can go back and run numbers and then run numbers on the township side to say, here's what the impact is to the township. And the
The net
township,
number we would be budgeting.
huh?
The net number.
The net number
Yeah,
that you
for
would
the
be
cost
budgeting.
of the
And,
city.
and so that it's reasonably close, you know, so that when we go to negotiate, it makes sense, what
Makes
that
sense.
looks like.
Yeah, so I don't think we need to take any official action or vote on that, but I think there's a consensus here that we'd like to have that included.
That's how I'm interpreting from you, and so I will move forward and put that in.
And just so that you know, I think, given the discussions we've also had, that we've had as a board regarding the agreement, the authority and the township, we'd want to have that kind of
Update.
worked into
Yep.
the agreement as well. That as we look towards revising that, which of course we'll be talking about with our solicitor, but that the name of this position will be set forth in there as part of the services that will be obtained from the township.
Sure.
Okay, those are my. Okay, I think that's it then, right? As far as any other comments regarding from you, Steve, on the.
No, I just at first glance, it looks like we're doing pretty well, like budget wise. I mean, there might be a small rate increase, but maybe none. So like this position will really be the determining factor of where we're gonna be.
All right, then we have on the agenda 13.1, we have a discussion of the second, the proposed second meter policy, which is in our packet. What do we have here on the agenda? It says possible action regarding second meter form process during winter months. There was a policy that I've reviewed. I certainly have comments to it, and I apologize, I didn't see Lewis's comments until recently.
Oh, sorry.
But no, that's totally fine. I trust that Lewis's comments probably pretty thorough. I'd like to review those. But I think the policy that we were given, I think conceptually provides in it everything that we were looking for. So my thought was that tonight to approve that policy with non-substantive
And just to be
revisions.
clear, because I wanted to be, I wanted to respect the sunshine law. I only sent it to you and to Steve.
Yeah,
So I didn't share it with anybody else.
but everybody else got a copy of it anyway.
Oh,
This is the
So,
one that was in the,
yeah, in the
Yeah,
packet.
not my comments.
No, but, and I apologize that, I wasn't able to factor those in. I definitely had comments, but I would say they are just meant for clarification so that this is the type of policy that I'd like to make sure is on
Yeah.
the website so that whoever at the township gets a question on the second meter, they can immediately refer to it. I don't want to delay. We had another ratepayer here tonight, other homeowner here tonight. Again, with a second meter issue. So I'd like to have this policy, which should have the form attached, which I've reviewed and revised the last time.
Yeah.
I know that I've revised that. So that's something that's clear, but I want this policy and the form and the policy to reference the form and both documents to be available on our website. But that being said, my recommendation is that we motion approve the policy with non-substantive revisions here as to the process and the form to be utilized.
Good.
Okay,
I would
so,
second that.
okay, you have a
Yep.
second?
well,
Any questions or comments?
None.
All those in favor?
I,
Aye. Okay, that passes. And then, no more public comment. We've
I just
already
have a
addressed that.
question. We received a B-list from McCombie.
Yes,
We have to address that?
not tonight.
Not
Okay.
tonight.
You'll address
Just
that.
FYI.
Next.
Yeah, that was FYI for you. We'll probably officially address that with the budget passing.
Okay.
And then we'll go from there. I should get one from Mike as well.
Before and after would be helpful.
Before and after,
Yeah, I'd just like to know what the rate.
what it was. Yeah.
What
you-
it is now.
I was
We should've-
looking for last year's version.
Oh,
Yeah.
current and, yeah, I think that would be helpful as well.
Yeah, I did bring a copy in case the authority did want to discuss that tonight, but yeah, the last year's was sent out in the end of October of 2022, and this year's is mid-November of 23, so. But yeah, I'll make sure Steve gets a copy of later.
Right, thank you.
All right, with that, I adjourn the meeting.
Very good.
All right, go Birds.